Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to show you how you can set up your Visual Studio Code for your effective process of web development. Now, Visual Studio Code, or normally known as VS Code, is one of the powerhouse among code editors, especially for web developers. This is because of its flexibility and extensive customization options with a lot of extensions that make it a top choice for most developers. So in this video, we are going to see how we can set up Visual Studio Code for web development and how to use essential extensions and install them to streamline your workflow. So the first thing is installation of Visual Studio Code. To install VS Code, you're simply going to go to code.visualstudio.com and you'll be redirected to this page. So when you click on that option, you're going to see the versions that are available. If you're using Mac OS, you can download the Mac OS version. If you're using Windows, you can download the Windows installer. And if you're using Linux or Ubuntu, you can install this. So once you download Visual Studio Code, it has a pretty much straightforward way of installing it. So you just click on the file that you downloaded and then install it. If you need more details on that, I have a special video for you on how to install VS Code step by step. Now that the installation is over, what are some of the essential extensions for web development that you can find in VS Code? So I'm going to open my VS Code. Now, this is how the interface looks like. You can create new file, open file which is already existing, or you can connect to Tunnel, SSH, Dev Container, WSL, GitHub Code Spaces, or remote repository. And then right below you'll see recent files that you've been working on. So you can show welcome page on startup, or you can choose to uncheck this. Now on the left hand side, you have files. This is where all your files are going to show when you're working on a particular file. And then you have the search bar that can help you search anything within your code or within the files that you're writing. And then we have the source control. This will show you the changes you're making if you connect it to GitHub. And then this shows run and debug. So you can open a specific file and run it or debug it depending on which type of file you're working on, .html, .py, .php, whatsoever. And then here you have an icon for extensions. Now, for extensions, for example, we have this code name. These are the extensions that I have already installed. Now, extensions are basically backbone for Visual Studio. And I think that is one reason I personally love it so much, because it has so many extensions that can help you productive, can help you write code faster, can help it make things easier for you, can help you debug, and etc. So how do you install extensions on VS Code? So you go to the extension icon, just as I've shown you, and then we can choose, for example, we want to install ESLint. So we just search for ESLint here. When you click on it, so we can install it by clicking install, and your extension will be installed. You repeat the same thing for any other extension you'd like to install. For example, let's look for the extension HTML CSS support. This extension normally helps you to autocomplete HTML class names and selectors. So let's just look for it, HTML CSS support. It's right here. When you click on it, you can see it has over 7 million users, and it helps you a lot with HTML and CSS. So let's install it. Now, when you're installing extensions, you just don't install anything. You want to make sure that you're going to install something that you're going to use. If you're not going to use it, there's no point of installing it. So you should keep that at the back of your mind. So now that is basics of how to install extensions. There's so many extensions here in VS Code. You can search simply by filtering most popular, recently published, or categories. You can look through the categories based on what you exactly want or which technology you'd like to be using it for. And when you go to most popular, you can see that Python is the most popular, and that means that Python developers really use this a lot. Jupyter, Live Server for web development, Prettier, IntelliCode. This is your AI assistant for writing code. So you can also install it as well. So you look through all these, you have so many options. There is even Chinese language for Visual Studio Code, Git length, using Git within VS Code, this is highly recommended as well. So now we have seen how to install extensions. How do we customize the settings for web development? So first we have to understand that VS Code has two types of settings. We have the user settings and then the workspace settings. So to that, we're just going to click right below here. Let's remove this extension thing. So when we click right here, we find settings, or you can press Ctrl plus comma. So when we go to these settings, this is applied globally within the project. So you can change it to whatever you want and play around with it, but make sure before you touch anything here, you know what you're really working with. So we have the text editor itself, formatters, different editors, etc. We have the workbench, which has appearance, breadcrumbs, editor management, settings, and then we have the window. We can create new window instantly. So now let's see how we can create workspaces. So when you go to file, you have already some existing folders. You can add a folder to workspaces. Just navigate to my desktop. Then I have a folder. So I'm going to click on that folder and click on add. So when I come here, I have a workspace here and it is untitled workspace. So a workspace is basically a space where you can add in different projects within just a single workspace. So you can switch between different workspaces. So you can see this file has different file formats within the workspace. There's what we call file associations. These are the different types of files that you will create. For example, .html file automatically creates HTML files. .css files, this one will create CSS files. So when we create maybe .py, you see that this is going to be a Python file. And then VS Code will recommend to you, do you want to install the recommended Python extension from Microsoft for Python language? If you want to, you just click on install. And as already mentioned, the Python extension is most used in the VS Code marketplace. So VS Code will automatically recommend it for you. Now that is all about file associations. Now let's look at something else, which is editor configurations. How do you configure your editor, like adjusting the size, all that? So what you can do, we go to settings, and in the settings you have user and you have workspace. So in the user, density of tab height, you can make it compact and you can see it squeezes itself immediately. So just below the text editor, we can find the font. Here, this is the default font family. So you can change this and you can configure fonts in the edit.json file. So font size, we can increase this to 16. So for example, when you go back to one of our files and you can see the font size has increased. So let me just take you back to settings slightly so you can see the difference. It was 14 before. You can see it reduces. So when I increase it, maybe let's say to 20, you can see it increases. This will be your default font size. So let's take it to 15 rather. This is also perfect. Alright, so the rest font weight, you can edit this in your settings.json, but before you touch anything in settings.json, you need to make sure that you know what you're really doing. Alright, so we go to formatting, format on paste, format on save mode, format on type. So you can change this to whatever you want, customize it to what you want. Suggestions, your workbench, you can change the appearance to activity bar icon click behavior. You can make it focus if you want that, and you can change the color theme here. For example, we can change it to light Visual Studio Code. You see that? Let's change it back to dark. You see? So you can play around with all these settings. And next is how do we optimize VS Code for performance? Now is make sure that you keep extensions minimal. The number of extensions you have should not interfere. As I mentioned earlier, that you don't need to install just anything. If you're not using a particular extension, feel free to remove it. For example, to remove it, you just click on that particular one and then uninstall it, and you don't have it anymore. You can click on what you're not using and uninstall it. It's pretty quick. And regularly update your VS Code. If there is any kind of update, make sure you update it. The other thing is use workspaces to isolate projects and preventing interference between different project configurations. So feel free to navigate through your VS Code, look at all these settings that you have, have. And up here you have edit. You can edit files, you can select files, view, you can click on editor layout from here, split down if you want to, or you can go back to editor layout, split up. You can see we can change it to 2 columns. You can have 2 columns for the editor depending on what you want. So here you can actually open different files in different editors. So for example, if my styles is open there, I can open my index in the other one so that you can see that I have column layout for the project that I'm working on. So when we go back to editor layout, we can just go back to single and we shall work on one project at a time. There's a number of customizations you can do with Visual Studio Code depending on what you want. So for web development, the key extensions, we have ESLint, HTML support, live server. And if you're writing maybe React, you can install this extension ES7 for code snippets that will help you write React so much faster and increases speed for development. So thank you so much for watching. In the next video, we shall look at how to customize themes and color codes in Visual Studio Code. Hope you enjoyed this video.